Tagging from third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it, makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Red hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up there and way second
And welcome back to the Stupid Money Podcast. Alec and Alex here. We have not spoken since we did our offseason predictions. One of them we both got right. The other one's not so much, but I honestly kind of expected that in a way. It's been a month or so since we did a show, so we have a lot to catch up on here. But the big story, I guess, is the Phillies got Trey Turner 11 for 300. The years, I don't know. The years were a lot to me, but the price was good for the years, I'd say. Then they got Taijuan Walker 4 for 72. That was a little out of left field, but he was one of the few, not elite, but like serviceable starting pitchers that didn't have the qualifying offer on him. So I get it. A lot of years, a lot of dollars, I thought there, but I don't think they care at this point. And then lefty reliever Matt Strom from the Red Sox, 2 for 15. Gives him another lefty that throws hard, better than Brad Hand, I guess. So, just going off of those three moves, what were your thoughts? Good, bad, a grade maybe on those?
I mean, obviously I love the Turner. Like you said, the years were a lot, but I feel like they kind of laid the groundwork almost for the league as far as long years, less AAV to kind of build a team around. It started with the Harper deal, and then they were kind of the first one to do it this offseason with Turner, sacrificing down the road. Not even sacrificing, but kind of taking the risk on guys in their late 30s, 40s for less, to pay them less money now and kind of build the team around them, which gives them a chance to maybe overspend on a guy like Taijuan Walker, which I don't know if it was necessarily an overspend in terms of the pitching market,
right?
Like this year, but I don't think Taijuan Walker is probably realistically worth $18 million or whatever he's getting a year. But when you see like the Tigers spend $10 million on like Matt Boyd, I feel like $18 million for Taijuan Walker is not too bad.
No, that's just how the market's going, I guess. And you kind of brought up the point of the Phillies setting the blueprint. I think we also need to add in here that the 25 or 28, whatever it is a year that Harper and Turner make, when they're like 38, let's say, 10 years from now, we're talking 8-10 years from now, when they're in their late 30s and maybe, they're only hitting 250 with like, I don't know, 15, 20 home runs, something like that. That production to what that value is of a contract might actually be what it should be, because guys might be making, the top of the line stars 10 years from now might be making 50 million a year. So it actually might end up being what the market for those guys maybe would be. Maybe it's a little bit over, but considering you got 6 to 8 prime years out of them, you really don't care at that point.
Yeah, like Dansby Swanson's like killed us, but like realistically, him and Harper have like the same AAV this year, and Swanson's had like one season, whereas WRC is like above average. So like the payroll is just going to be so inflated by the time that those contracts are dwindling down. I see no problem with it at all.
Yeah, no, I think if it's what you got to do to try to win within the next 5 years, it's kind of the risk of doing the business at this point, I guess. I don't know, there's nothing else they can really do about it. Obviously, they were restricted by the fact that Turner had the qualifying offer on him. We talked about this when we did the prediction show. Neither of us thought they were going to get a second one, a second qualifying offer guy, and have to give up 2 more picks and some international pool money. It just gets really expensive at that point. There was still, Chris Bassett was in Philly for a wedding apparently, and everybody thought he was signing with the Phillies, and that made no sense. That if they were going to use the qualifying offer again, they wouldn't do it on Bassett with Rondon still out there at the time. So that that never made sense. But that was a funny rumor for like 3 hours a couple weeks ago. But I don't know. I think it pretty much has gone about how I expected so far this offseason. I thought maybe they're waiting to see some guys' markets drop or if they're going to try a trade. But I thought maybe they'd get a couple more bullpen guys. Last year they got 3. Actually, they got, I guess if you count bringing in some of those, like the guys they brought in on minor league deals, or like Bilotti and that, they brought in 5 or 6 really.
Because they signed Knable in hand, but then like Bilotti was a camp invite.
Mm-hmm. And that Sheriff guy too that got hurt, I think. Yeah.
I tried to forget about
him. Yeah, that's true. So I think I'm just kind of waiting to see when they build up that bullpen depth again, which needs to happen, because I was looking on the depth chart and there was really only 5 or 6 guys on there. It was Strom, who they just signed, Dominguez, Sir Anthony, Brogdon, and Bilotti, I think, were the only guys they had on there. So they definitely need to build that up a little bit.
I feel like McGarry might kind of start in the bullpen. I don't know how they plan on using him. I know he kind of hit a wall in AAA last year, so they kind of slowed him down as far as the rumors of him being up for the playoffs. They kind of faltered once. I think he had around like maybe a 4 or 5 ERA in AAA.
Yeah.
So they kind of pumped the brakes on him. But I think if they kind of weave him into a bullpen role, I think his stuff will be pretty good there. So I feel like he could be an option to break camp in the bullpen.
Yeah, and they do have to get cheaper somewhere, I guess, is the best way to put it. They have to find ways to have some cheap players on the team just to fill out the roster, because it's just not realistic that everybody is, an $8+ million a year player. It's not going to happen unless you're the Mets, I guess. But
that's why the Liam Hendricks trade rumors kind of scare me, because I feel like notoriously, I know the Yankees won a World Series with Chapman, but I just feel like trading for the big name relievers, it never really works.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially when he only has I think he has this year and then 1 more year of team control and then an option. So like they'd probably ask for Abel, and I know not all 3 pitching prospects will probably stay here, but I don't think that's the trade you put a Mick Abel into.
Yeah, I think, and I said this, I think I said this on our preview show, and I definitely said in the past, I do think that the big 3 of the pitching prospects make it to opening day with the Phillies, not on the roster, but in the organization. And if it gets to the point at the deadline where they definitely need to do something, and maybe they need to part with someone, it's a little bit of a desperate move, I guess. Like, then I could see one of them going is kind of what I think. I think they'd rather hold on to all of them, see how things go the first half of the year, and then if they have to adjust, they will. That's kind of what I see going on there. But
yeah, if they're gonna try and trade for a big name reliever, I'd rather them just throw the kitchen sink at Clase from the Guardians. I doubt they'd give him up, but he has like 5 years of team control left, and he's insane. So I'd rather them give up Abel plus some for him instead of 2 years of Liam Hendricks, who's coming off a down year.
Yeah, Clase, I mean, that's definitely Abel and then some, but I think that's worth doing. I haven't checked, but I would assume if you went on baseball trade values, he's probably by far the most valuable reliever in the game. If you just count production, age, control, price, that kind of stuff, I don't think anyone comes close to him in terms of closers, bullpen guys from that aspect. So that would be a tough pool, but it would be one that I think would be worth it long term.
Yeah, I don't think it's too realistic. I just know the Guardians are kind of one of those franchises that offloads guys before they have to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little early for them to think about that with Clase since he has so many years left. But I just remember people kind of throwing it out there towards the end of the season last year.
Yeah. So Phillies, I think we like the offseason. Obviously, we when we look at the way the team played after Rob Thompson took over. They were on, I think, a 94 win pace or something like that if he was there the whole season. Obviously, they made the World Series. You can't complain really about the job he did. They're going to miss Harper the first half of the year, which, we know it's unfortunate, but you bring in Turner. You pray Castellanos kind of returns to Reds, Tigers, Castellanos. You expect/hope that Bohm, Marsh, and Stott all take another step forward. The three of them kind of looked like they ran out of gas in the World Series. I get that as the longest season for the three of them in their careers up to that point. So I see that, but you hope they learn from it. So there's a lot of reasons to be, optimistic about what they did even without Harper. But I think it comes down to the Phillies and the Mets are kind of the new Yankees Red Sox arms race that we saw from like the early 2000s, where the two of them just traded and signed for everyone. The Phillies I thought after the first wave of the offseason, I thought the Phillies honestly pulled ahead because to me, Scherzer and Verlander, the Mets are relying on two 40-year-old pitchers. I just don't know how that holds up again, especially Verlander just made a deep postseason run again. I don't know how many bullets he honestly has left in him. But then the other night we get this crazy story where we thought Carlos Correa was going to the Giants on a 13-year, $350 million deal, and then it comes out the press conference was postponed. There was something with the medicals, and then at like 3 a.m. last night, or 2 nights ago now, John Heyman says that Carlos Correa is going to the Mets, who were rumored to finish second the first time. Lesser deal though, I think 12 for 315. Yeah. So he left a year and $35 million on the table. But obviously joins a way better team. So the Mets, if you count in what they'll have to spend in luxury taxes, their payroll is about at 490 because they got out of a little money with James McCann trade. So yeah, their payroll's at about 490. It's the highest in North American sports history, I think. Pretty confident saying that. What do the Phillies have to do anything to stay up with the Mets now that they have Verlander? They brought back Nimmo. They signed that Senga, the pitcher from Japan, Korea? I think it was Japan.
I think
Japan. Edwin Diaz is back. They have Correa now. Then they got David Robertson, who probably is going to run out of steam too. But the Mets team is expensive. To me, it's old and expensive outside of like Lindor and Correa. I think they're paying a lot of money to a lot of guys on the back half of their careers already. But, do you think the Phillies have to do anything else to counter this?
I don't know, free agent wise. I think the first thing they have to do to kind of counter or be aware of the Mets is give Nola an extension, because that just feels like when if he gets to free agency next year, I feel like that's like a prime Cohen target. Just poach him from the Phillies and kind of addition by subtraction for the Mets, take him away from us. But honestly, the more I thought about the Correa move, it kind of like it doesn't help us because it's the Mets and they're in our division. But like Harper's gone until July, and it now officially, not officially, but kind of takes the Giants out of the wild card race. So like we'll be kind of not fighting because the roster is strong enough and the lineup strong enough, but staying afloat without Harper until he gets back to DH. And our schedule this year is kind of backloaded. Like our September is very difficult. So Harper will be back for that, but the Giants will be one less team to worry about in the wild card. But I don't think the Phillies will stop making moves. I feel like Middleton's going to kind of have to see what Cohen's doing and not match it. You don't have to spend $500 million to have a good team. But I think the bullpen, like you said, definitely has to get deeper. They don't necessarily have to make a Hendricks or Clase splash, but they do need arms back there. I don't think you could kind of just be like, oh, Falter and Sanchez could go in there and that'll be our depth.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need impact bullpen guys who have been there before without spending $15 million on each of them.
Yeah, that I would agree with that. I don't think you can go crazy. You got to try to find some, you got to try to find some Jose Alvarados, I guess, guys that other teams kind of gave up on and you think you can fix and turn into very serviceable bullpen pieces. There's a ton of them out there, honestly. There's a lot of guys that throw hard but are just wild or have a mechanical problem that you can try to fix. So I do think maybe they take 1 or 2 flyers on guys like that again. I could see that to be cheap.
I feel like a lot of people around the league are starting to go off that. The Phillies development. I watched Taijuan Walker's press conference, and everything that he said came back to Caleb Cotham and the bullpen coaches and the analytics department being able to not fix but improve upon his cutter or improve upon his split finger. And we saw it last year with the uptick in Alvarado's cutter usage and just throwing this instead of just throwing the sinker 75% of the time. They now have a plan on how to develop these pitchers and how to kind of improve on their tendencies and go about their pitch sequencing that leads to better results. So I feel more confident in signing these maybe fringe guys or guys who've shown flashes of stuff but haven't really been able to put it together. I feel more confident in their coaching staff's ability to develop it and not we're just getting free agent invites of Neftali Feliz or whoever they just randomly bring in and hope that they're good.
Yeah, and I do think, we mentioned Griff McGarry. I think someone like Eric Miller too. There's a couple, maybe, I don't know what's going on with Francisco Morales where they brought him up in May, and he wasn't bad, and then he went back down in the minors and was terrible, and we never saw him again. So I don't know what their plan is with any of that, but I do think some of those prospect guys could get a look in the bullpen, at least in spring training, and then maybe they make a move in the middle of spring training if they have to, if they don't like what they see.
Yeah, Miller's interesting to me because I watched him pitch he was in the Futures game last year, and he had a really good inning, big lefty, sits upper mid 90s. And then the Rule 5 draft came around and they just didn't protect him. And I'm oh, he's definitely gone. And I was our systems, I feel like we had 4 at the time of the Rule 5 draft. I think our 40 man was 36 guys and they just didn't protect him. And I was I feel like our farm system's not necessarily deep enough to not protect one of our top 10 guys in the system. And no teams took him. So originally I felt that was kind of we got lucky there, but at the same time, if we're not protecting him and no teams are taking him, I don't know what that says as far as what our system really thinks about how he'll project long term.
Yeah, I don't know. That was interesting to me too that they didn't protect him. I don't know if they know something, or they just don't think other teams are interested in him right now. I don't know. That was weird, but at least he still here, which is good. So they do get the opportunity to get another look at him in spring training. So that'll be good, at least. So we talked about this last night, but MLB Scoops put out that thing about the Phillies and the Dodgers being extremely interested in Rafael Devers via trade. This account, I mean, it has 5,000 followers. But it was right about a couple things recently. Dansby Swanson of the Cubs, Justin Turner of the Red Sox, Omar Narvaez to the Mets. Okay, maybe it has something. I don't know. But Devers is someone that's honestly been talked about here for a while, since Dave Dombrowski came in, just because, the whole Red Sox connection with Dave being there and all that. I mean, Devers is a dude. When he's right, he's a top 10 hitter in baseball. The trade is doable, I will say. If you go off of the MLB or the baseball trade values. Devers values at like 37. The Phillies can easily get to that if they wanted to. I think they would give Bohm, but this is kind of where my problem comes in. So I think it makes the Phillies really good this year in 2023, but you have to extend Devers, and then you have Hoskins there who would also need to be extended. Whereas, Bohm you had under control for another 3 or 4 years, at 3
Yeah,
3
right.
yeah. So, like, a lot cheaper. You don't have to do something with him right away, a controllable piece that you think is getting better. I would bring Devers, but the thing is, I feel like you gotta find a way for them to take Hoskins instead of Bohm, which I just don't see happening because as we're doing this, the Red Sox just signed Will Myers, and they still have they have Bobby Dalbec still there, I think, and they have that top prospect, Tristan Cassis, who all these guys are first baseman slash DHs, and that's what Hoskins is. So I think you would honestly just have to give them a better prospect or something and be like, take Hoskins and whatever you do with him, like we don't care. I just it sounds nice on the surface, but when you look at it that way, I don't think it's that logical. And I've said this, especially with what the Mets have done. I want another power, like an impact bat because of Harper being out. If Harper wasn't out, I wouldn't even be entertaining this really.
Mhm.
But with him out half the year and how good this division is going to be, like you got to just try to get as good as you possibly can. But I don't know. There seems like a lot on the surface. It sounds good, but when you dig down, it just doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, I feel like we do have the pieces to get it done. As far as they don't really have a center fielder. They don't like their like. I know Jaron Duran was up for a while, and they didn't like him at all. And so like Rojas is doable, or if they like Crawford more or whatever, and like the top end pitching talent outside of Painter, obviously.
Mhm.
But I just like you said, logistically, like I don't think it makes too much sense as far as they'd want Bohm, and then that doesn't really leave us in a good spot as far as third base in the future. As far as Devers would be obviously an upgrade, but like then
Mhm.
you're stuck with Hoskins if you want to move off him and not pay that big contract that's probably going to be in the 100 million range, knowing Boris and how he'll kind of negotiate for Hoskins. So I just on like you said, on the surface, I feel like when it would if it would happen, we'd all be obviously stoked. But I think in a year or two, once the dust settles and if we let Hoskins go, I feel like we'd kind of feel some fallback out of that as far as where do we go now at the corners.
Yeah, I honestly think they'd have to let Hoskins walk, and you sign like some Freddie Galvis, or you let Sosa take third base for a year, and then you see if maybe how you Lee, the hitting prospect, comes up, put him at second, and maybe Stock goes to third or something, and then that's like your long-term solution. I don't know. That seems like a
Yeah.
lot needs to go right in that situation, but I don't think they'd be a fan of losing both Hoskins and Bohm. I know Devers might be as good as the two of them combined, but
Yeah.
I that doesn't seem like something that's going to happen. I think that's something if Devers makes it through the offseason still in the Red Sox, and the Red Sox know they're not going to sign him, and July is coming around, and his price goes down a little bit, but the Red Sox still want to get something for him, and maybe the Phillies have an injury or someone's not playing well, then maybe I see them pull the trigger and maybe they do try to re-sign him then, or they just say, okay, he's kind of like what the Astros wanted to do with Harper in his
Hmm.
final year with the Nationals, something like that. Just give us a playoff run. Let's see what happens. I could see that. I think that's a little more likely than right now.
Yeah, that's a trade that has to get done with an extension in place. I feel like
Hmm.
with the amount of capital that you'd have to give up, you don't make that trade and then hope that he re-signs with you. I feel like you kind of have to lay that groundwork beforehand and say this is what our extension offer like would be Like, how does that sound? How would you see yourself playing here? All that stuff before you give up 2 or 3 of your top 8 prospects plus a major league piece to get a guy who walks at the end of the season.
Yeah, I guess just the way it's going, it's not going to happen. It's a fun rumor. It would definitely be exciting to have Devers on a team with Turner, Real Muto, Harper, Schwarber, Castellanos. That would be insane. I think a lot of people would start. I mean, that would definitely, in my opinion, be the best lineup in baseball, regardless of what the Mets think. I just think has way more MVP candidates, is the way I'll put it. It's just
easily.
Yeah,
that would be, especially in Citizens Bank Park, the power lefties there. Devers and Harper would probably hit like 40 each with that type of protection in the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it would be exciting, but to me, that's just that's not going to happen. Really quick, Zach Eflin got the biggest deal the Rays ever gave a free agent, which was funny. He's definitely going to win a Cy Young now, I feel like, going to the Rays. It just feels like a lock.
I feel like the Rays have they were obviously always like the benchmark, like this is how smart organizations operate. I just feel like they've kind of like they gave us Alvarado for Garrett Cleavinger. Like they're one of those franchises that they obviously have a good system and they know what they're doing, but just sometimes when they penny pinch because they didn't want to sign Alvarado before like the 40-man cuts the year they traded him, like they just penny pinch these guys and like they've hit more often than they've missed, but I feel like the last few years they're starting to miss a little bit more and the cracks in the armor are starting to show a little bit.
Yeah, I think they've kind of overdone it. They've kind of gone too far the way they were going, and now it's backfiring. I think that's fair to say.
Ever since Kevin Cash pulled Blake Snell in the World Series, I feel like they've slowly declined since that as far as status. Or it's not like, oh my God, they traded with the Rays. That guy's going to be like, now it's kind of like, okay, like, well, I'm sure it was a good trade, but it seems like it wasn't as much of a one-sided deal as like the Chris Archer trade ended up being. Like they've gotten further removed from those types of deals.
Yeah. Another team that's kind of imploded, the Red Sox. Bogaerts goes to the Padres. The Padres have a really good 1 through 4 in their lineup. I will say that Tatis, Bogaerts, Machado, Soto, like really good. Their 5 through 9 doesn't concern me that much. And kind of when you go back and you look at what the Phillies did to the Padres in the NLCS, they took advantage of the fact that 5 through 9 was so bad, and I kind of expect that to kind of be the same thing in 2023 with the Padres. But for the Red Sox, the way they've blown apart a World Series contending team, pretty funny. Betts traded, Benintendi traded, Bogart's gone, Vasquez traded. The amount of guys that they've let walk out the door there in the past few years has been quite impressive.
Yeah, them and the Giants, they've kind of tried to go like Rays ball. Like they brought in Bloom and they expected just because they got Hein Bloom, they were like, okay, the organization will run like exactly as the Rays do.
Right.
And that's just not been the case because they're missing everybody that's underneath Bloom in that like type of mindset that was with the Rays. So yeah, and now they're scared to spend money on their like homegrown guys. It's hard to believe, but at the same time, I don't know how like what they would have done because even if they signed Bogarts, like they're not going to compete with the Yankees or the Blue Jays this year.
Right.
But like it's just if I was a Red Sox fan, I'd probably be searching for new teams just because ownership has burnt them too many times.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Yeah,
if they don't re-sign Devers, they're going to become like they're going to have A's level attendance.
Yeah, and it does feel like they have to either trade Devers or get the extension done now, because they cannot let him possibly go to free agency. And I think that's why I don't know if like I said, I'd prefer they wait until the deadline and then maybe it's more doable for the Phillies, but it does feel like they'll try to trade him this offseason if they can't get an extension done by, I don't know if they have a deadline, but by the start of spring training or something like that.
Yeah, and it seems like I saw an article the other day. The Red Sox and their front office, they were like, yeah, Devers is our number one priority. Like, we are like insistent on getting this extension done. And then Boris, or I don't know whose agent is, Devers' camp was like, yeah, like, we're so far apart in the offers, like, we are under the assumption we're operating as if he is heading to free agency. Okay. So like they're a mess.
They are. All right, so that's all we got for today. We'll be back if the Phillies trade for Devers or do anything more significant. We're gonna get deeper into stuff as the offseason goes on. But for Alex, I'm Alec. Thanks for watching.